welcome to the Free Cheese episode 568. I'm your Joe Dix, joined by Matt Sellner.
Hello.
The Free Cheese is a weekly video game podcast about video games, brought to you once a week by thefreecheese.com. Matt, we're adding another game to the list this week. Our 101st game. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. More on that later, and our experience with it, and everything in between. But first, Matt, I'd like to know which video game property do you want to see have a puzzle game spin-off? There's been quite a few. Sonic's already got one. Kirby's got one.
Sure does.
Mario hung out with the puzzles and the dragons.
What if you got weird? What if, like, Tetris had a side hustle that was a puzzle of a puzzle game?
Oh, you want a puzzle? You want a Tetris puzzle game you want a Puyo? No. You want do you want all the Tetris pieces to be characters?
Sure. Let's get weird.
All right, I like it. Go the Puyo Puyo route, but make them Tetris. I'm kind of dumb. I just want more of like a celebration of Sega, always. I feel like any game that can put all of Sega's stuff in one thing is always going to be everything I want. So like my gut reaction to this was like, let's make a Burning Rangers puzzle game. And it doesn't need to be anything different than like what we're playing here this week in Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. Just with Burning Rangers characters. But why not go all the way and just put all the Sega characters out there in things?
So yeah, I think Crazy Taxi has some potential.
Oh,
it's been in the news recently, about speed and...
I've been playing a lot of Crazy Taxi lately. I bought Crazy Taxi 3 for the Xbox as our journey back through these consoles, you and I, continues. And Crazy Taxi 3, awesome. Like, super good game. If they could just put that out on a modern platform, they won't. But if they could, it takes the first game's level, one of the two levels from Crazy Taxi 2, and then puts in a new Crazy Taxi 3 exclusive level, expands the soundtrack, improved graphics, there's a jump button. It's a pretty good Crazy Taxi. Did you, like, let me ask you this, when you played Crazy Taxi, were you like, if only they had more Offspring? Well, guess what? Crazy Taxi 3. More Offspring. It's something. This week, Matt, we're not talking about Crazy Taxi, unfortunately. We are talking Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, developed by Capcom, published by, you guessed it, Capcom, released for the arcade with ports to PlayStation, Sega Saturn, PC. Now it's been remade and remastered in other forms across 360 and PS3, and now in a whole new collection that's on everything.
Let me tell you what, it was very overwhelming to figure out where to play it at.
But that's a good problem to have.
It is a good problem to have.
Its first release in the arcade was May 31st, 1996. On the back of the box, it reads as follows: burst right into the feverish puzzle action that combines irresistible, addictive fun with famous Capcom characters. Beat your opponent to the punch by stacking block after block in strategic patterns and color combinations. I don't know why that's in all caps. Be the first to fill the opponent's screen with blocks and KO. You win, but get ready for more because you can't play just once. I see. They took the Pringles approach there. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. This is one of those weird ones, Matt. You elected this game, right? Was it me?
I did. Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was you. Yeah.
Yep.
But it's one of those ones where I forgot what I brought to the list this year for a moment. Why did you select Super Puzzle hold on. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo.
This is the direct ripple effect of the summer of Street Fighter 6. Also, because, I mean, we're making our list for the following year in the summer. Late summer. Man, that's right when Street Fighter 6 was around. Also, one of my Wii Sports killers, Tetris Effect.
Yeah.
And then I was just looking at the list for ideas, and I realized, man, I bet to put Tetris on this list, and we don't have one other puzzle game on this list. Marry those two ideas together, and voila, a game already exists from Capcom.
Yeah. They did it for you, and now we're doing it for them. What's your history with Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo? When's the first time you played this?
Before prepping for episode, not a lot. I maybe had played it a couple times in passing, on like emulators or something. I don't think I've ever played it in an arcade.
Have you ever seen it in an arcade? I don't think I've ever seen it out there.
I don't think so. This wouldn't be something I'd be playing at my ripe young age, at 4 when this thing came out, 5, depending on when. Yeah, but I've seen it more than I probably have played it. Obviously before going into this, I just knew it wasn't like Tetris. It played different than Tetris, and there was a whole, like, it was a competition mechanic. It wasn't like a get the high score. That was about.
Yeah, this is much more about, like, high scores help, but it is a competitive game first and foremost. It's not something you can play it alone, but you're still playing it against a computer player. Where something like Tetris you can just play by yourself indefinitely. How would you describe the gameplay in this?
Kind of Puyo-Puyo-ish in the way that the blocks rotate around each other, and there's the different colors, because the blocks always come down two a piece, and there's one, one's like your rotating anchor and the other one rotates around it. You can get any shape you need out of it pretty much. But what's different is, like, you can keep stacking the same color indefinitely, and there's also there's also, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, encouragement to build bigger blocks, especially rectangles or squares, even ones, because when you eventually break them, it will cause more havoc on the opponent's end. But you keep building and building and building, and what you end up having to do is you have to touch these special, like, breaker blocks. I think that's the name of them, right? Breaking blocks. And then once you get those to touch a color, that's when, whatever that breaker hits, whatever that, if it's like a blue breaker, you have to hit it against a blue block, and whatever that blue block is touching, whether it's a rectangle, whether it's by itself, whether it's a whole string that goes throughout, that all will break. And then depending on what breaks, and if you can chain it with more breaks after it, and the size of these breaks and all this other stuff, you start sending shit over to your opponent. And then it looks like not too reminiscent of, like, a competitive Tetris game there.
Yeah, and I think, like, if I remember correctly, it's been a bit since I've dug into this stuff, but I'm pretty sure that competitive Tetris took its cues from, like, the garbage dumping from Puyo Puyo.
Makes sense.
Which this definitely would have too. And I think the thing that's different here is it's not just raw garbage dump. It's timed garbage
right,
dump.
Yes, yeah.
Right, as soon as it drops, you have these little counters on each of them that make them seem like bombs about to blow up. And if you don't clear them in time, then they become gems. However, I don't know about you, but the one thing I started to learn how to do is to use those to your advantage, right? Like, start stacking your gems in a way around those countdown times so that you can get these big sort of chains set up, and then you in turn redump the garbage. Nothing like a good redump. The other big thing that stands out about this against just a standard Tetris or any other game or anything like that is that you actually select a character at the beginning of your either head-to-head mode or your arcade, and then your characters kind of fight against one another, kind of, right? Like they kind of punch each other as you send garbage back and forth.
Yeah, it's like Hadoukens and stuff like that.
Yeah. And because it's a Capcom, it's a Street Fighter spin-off game, they, of course, pull in Street Fighter characters, but also Darkstalkers characters. Did you have a particular character that you kind of trended toward?
Yes. Why can't I think of their name now? It was it Heisen? I don't know how to say that. The Darkstalker character.
I would have laughed if you said Ryu.
Oh, no.
I would say Senko.
Okay. Yeah, Senko. We'll go with that.
Senko, maybe? Yeah.
I feel like... So that's one of the things with this game. Each character... There is... When you dump stuff, you just don't dump randomly. There is a pattern to it. And that pattern is based off who you have selected as a character. And I don't know, maybe it's just in my mind, but I feel like her pattern seemed the most non-helpful in chaining things. It seemed a little crazier than like Ryu or Ken's. That's one of the dumb fighting mechanics about this. Like, if you know your opponent's dumping mechanic, you can kind of gear gems to it. Whereas just like the same thing in a fighting game, like, you probably know what's about to come your way. You're just looking for the first 5 frames of it to counter it. So it was pretty dumb that they somehow made that mechanic of anticipation come over to Puzzle Fighter. But no, I don't know.
But it's neat in the same, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think I helped my run rate at all. I think I just was getting better when I picked this character too. And it just seemed like I don't know. I was doing better. I don't know.
The full roster is Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Sakura, Morrigan, Donovan, Senko, and Felicia. The last 4 being from Darkstalkers, the first 4 from Street Fighter. The console ports add Mei Ling from Darkstalkers and Anita. But then there's also hidden characters. You've got Dan from Street Fighter Alpha, Akuma from Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and then Devilot from Cyberbots Full Metal Madness, who's a hidden boss and playable character that traveled back in time from the future of 2099 to challenge the leading and unbeatable puzzle fighter. Did you fight Devilot in your experience with the game?
No, never did.
Me neither. Did not get there. I will say I should point out, like, there have been a lot of versions of this. We did mention that up top, but the game released in arcade. It then got ported to home consoles for the Saturn and PlayStation. It was then made an HD remix for the PS3 and Xbox 360. And in those modes, it added high definition graphics, but it also character sprites were redrawn, etc., etc. Sorry, we missed a Dreamcast version somewhere along the way, Matt. There was a Dreamcast version. And yeah, so this HD mode kind of pulls in a lot of the Dreamcast stuff that was added. The X, Y, and Z mode, as well as an X dash mode that rebalanced character drop patterns for better competitive play. And then now there's also the Capcom Fighting Collection?
Ooh. Yes, it's in a collection somewhere.
Yeah, but it's in that along the way. Sorry, there's also a Game Boy Advance version that I missed, and a PC version that I missed, and a mobile phone version that you can't play anymore. It's out there, man. Puzzle Fighter Tube is out there.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit. I mean, I think directly comparing this to Tetris works on a couple of levels here because one, Tetris is a universal language. Two, you and I have the most familiarity with Tetris, and three, it is one of our tentpole premier video games for season 12 this year. So in looking at Tetris, what makes this game more difficult than Tetris?
So one, you're always against pressure. You have an outside pressure at all times. You're almost like you have to keep your eye as best you can on the other board because it would just help you knowing what may be coming or how fast you should start going or something like that. So just that outside pressure. And then they kind of depend on how you play Tetris. I mean, we talked about it when we first did our first episode on Tetris Effect. I'm not a very good high scorer, but like I like to keep a clear board. So I'm just constantly just kind of getting like one Tetris and maybe setting up a couple moves later for the next one or whatever. This game, it feels like you always have to be thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead, which if you're good at other puzzle games, you're always thinking like that. But it challenged me to do that more so. And in Tetris Effect, you can actually see the next 4 or 5 pieces. I can't remember the exact count. But in this game, you have the one that's being dropped and your next one. And then you still somehow have to think 2 moves past that and knowing all the possibilities that can come your way.
Yeah.
It's tough. And it's one of those things is just... I can't speak for all the other console ports or whatever, but I was playing through the Capcom Arcade Second Stadium, like their little like arcade cabinet collection thing. And it seemed like this just straight arcade port, so it didn't have like an endless mode or something for you to kind of like practice without always having like, you know, the opponent next to you. So it just seemed like you needed just to put hours in and maybe watch someone else play. There was times on like later levels I would lose attention. I mean, because there's no in the arcade thing, you just put in more tokens by hitting R3. It's fine.
Yeah, it's not.
So like in like stages 6 or 7 of the regular arcade mode, I would play enough to stay in it, but I would watch what the CPU was doing to see
just to learn
like tips or whatever. Yeah. So you know, just playing and watching is probably going to be the best way you can get better. But no, like I feel like that you're always having to think ahead, and you're just not going to learn how to do that properly without playing a lot.
Do you feel like now kind of learning to build a bit more, you'll take that back into Tetris, or do you think that muscle memory just stays strongest with Tetris?
I mean, I played Tetris for so many hours. It's going to be hard to twist the brain a little bit. But I mean, you could take some of it, but I never got to the point where I felt good at this game either. So, I mean, I did all right. I got through the main arcade mode. I got to the boss, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but like there was no chance. I played the boss at least 20, 30 rounds, and I won, let alone having to do 2 of 3. So
you're talking Akuma specifically,
yes,
right?
Yes. Yeah. So again, I and that was just normal because the arcade port had a hard mode as well, which I didn't even touch because I couldn't even get through Akuma. So on normal,
yeah, there's hard. I had an okay time on normal, but hard mode, the first few stages were already like they're a little tough. I can see in time with practice, but then there's expert mode too, which like I don't think that's ever going to happen for me, and that's fine.
Oh, that wasn't even in the arcade.
Yeah, this is I think exclusive. This probably was in the Dreamcast version and then got ported into the HD version as well. What do you think about this game is easier than Tetris?
You can almost like if you keep a clean board, you can almost use your opponent's dumps against them. And there's almost like Tetris, you always have to be careful about where you're placing blocks. There's almost like a fun, almost you're encouraged to speed up because if you can get those timers down, there's so many blocks there to just recounter if you get the right drop. So just like the speed, and you don't necessarily have to be now if you're at the higher levels. This is probably where what I said just 30 seconds ago versus what I'm saying now is that's the difference between a really good player and me. But like you could be sloppy a little bit and still end up winning a round if you play to what you kind of play the hand you're given in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's just such a weird game in comparison to Tetris. You use different parts of your brain than you do. Similar parts, but yeah, it's just a departure from it.
I would say one thing too that makes it harder, and I forgot to say this part, is you can't control your breaks at any time. You're kind of at the grace of randomness, but it's an even randomness because the layout of all the blocks is exactly the same on both sides. And if you play fast enough, you get more blocks out to start loading crap on your opponent's side too. So speed is a big part of it, but also kind of getting the right block at the right breaker block at the right time goes a long way. And I don't know how it's randomized. I don't know if it is random or there is the grab bag. You grab all the pieces and then it resets like it does in Tetris.
Yeah, that I don't know if I ever got that.
I never recognized the pattern, but then again, it took me years to realize that Tetris, you go through all the blocks and you get them again.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't always a consistent rule either.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe that. Okay.
So it might not even have been that you didn't pick it up. It was, yeah. It's like one of those things where, like, in the last 15 years or something, the Tetris company was like, we're going to set a bunch of standards for how you make a Tetris game. And that was one of the rules they kind of landed on. Because, yeah, if you go back to some of the older ones, it's not that way. Right now, as we sit recording this, fresh off of several weeks of playing Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. I think I got it right.
Got it.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how skilled do you feel? What do you rate yourself at in terms of skill level in Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo?
I give myself a 5.
A 5?
I think I'm competent, but I'm not good.
Yeah. Would it surprise you that I would give myself a 5 as well?
Oh, okay. All right.
Right there, like, I feel better about playing it. Like, I can get through it, but I always, every time I play this game, and honestly, this has been the most significant amount of time I've spent with it in the lead up to recording. Just historically, because it's been on Mister for a while, and I've played some of the ports on and off. I've had this 360 version I think I had this 360 version even before you added it to the list, because it was on sale randomly for like $2 or $3, and I figured, yeah, why not just have that? I might have bought it in the last year. I don't remember, but this is definitely the most confident I've felt, but I still don't feel like I understand the game any better than I ever did. Like, I still feel like I'm just getting by on luck and a little bit of skill, but it's never quite like I know what I'm doing.
My win rates don't really drop off until like stage 5 or 6 in the normal mode.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, like 1 and 2 I can breeze by. 3 is like the first potential loss area. 4 I'd still do pretty good against, but yeah, once we get into like 5 and 6, it's a coin flip there.
You mentioned before that like there's no way to just play alone that you can kind of learn from. do you wish there were an endless mode or even a tutorial mode, or what is the game missing in that regard in terms of a learner or a learning experience?
I would love like a. Well, I do think an endless mode would be nice. I don't necessarily in this game. It's weird to have, I would think, but like it would be nice just to practice combo making. But I think this would be one of those games that would be really good with. Here is the setup, and you have these 3 blocks to get your chain. I think this would be one of those games, one of those puzzle games that would be really good with having that. And then like those challenges could start to incorporate a second player, like the AI opponent that then forces you to be fast. As like a hard mode to these challenges almost. I think that would benefit me more to seeing the setups and actually putting the setups into place, more so than just kind of willy-nilly just hoping I build something by accident.
Did you have a strategy going into the game? Like, I kind of started each match where I would take whatever 2 colors were matched together, I'd line them up on their side, drop them to the bottom, wait for the next 2 to come through. If something matched, I'd put it on either side, and I tried to like build it out so I could get 4s going as quickly as possible on a single or double colors. And then, kind of usually after that, you're thrown off just because you don't really have the right combination. So that's that. Did you have an approach to, okay, here's my start? Because like in Tetris, right? Like you kind of, how quickly can I get a block of 4s ready so that I can just drop a line in and get a Tetris?
It took me a bit to start doing this, and I don't know if I just got more lucky or with this strategy or not, but I started like the first block I would take. As the first block was coming down, I would look at the next block, and there was any color that was matching. I would pin that that color to the corner, and then immediately drop the next block of the same color right on top of that against like one of the walls. And then from there, I would look for that color and just keep building on that side. And then I would like eventually get to the point where I would probably knock out a color, like one of the colors that was coming off of it, and then start to create the gap to start putting the same color into the second column and start creating squares that way, while kind of keeping everything to the side and just trying to make squares as best as I can from the right-hand side. And then I started doing like the same color on both sides, that seeing whatever I kind of started getting the most of. So it was like my sides were getting stacked high and leaving the middle to kind of like get my cheap one hits in or stuff like that. Just trying to keep the middle clean as I build monstrosities across the left and right. I don't know if that did anything. I feel like I started winning more when I did that because I guess I have better outs, but I don't know.
It's hard to know. Like, was that working, or was it just the fact that you're paying closer attention to things helping? Or yeah. Again, I never felt like I had a strategy. I know I did because I was doing the same thing repeatedly, but I don't know that it ever made me feel more confident in winning. Is there something about this that you feel like it makes it a better puzzle game than Tetris?
I like I like the fact that it is encouraging. You have the outside force. You always either have a CPU character or you're going against another person. It keeps the game short in a way. I also like I like the 2 out of 3 as well with this too. It's not just one game and you're done. I like the fact that it uses Street Fighter's aesthetic. Like, I know that's kind of a cheap answer, but I like the characters that they use from Street Fighter and Darkstalkers. It's just it's weird because again, my mind's so used to Tetris. It's hard to break Tetris. I'm sure there's things that make so much more sense, or it would be so much better if I never had the amount of hours of Tetris I had going into this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the aesthetic around it, and I like the competition part of it. Although I do wish there was more of a single player mode, I guess, at some point.
You feel like that's the big thing that kind of sets it it's lower than Tetris in that regard, like just lacking in the single player element, or are there other things about this that you feel like at a core puzzle level are worse than Tetris?
Like, I just think they're different. I think they're different games. I don't think there's a good or bad thing. You know, I don't think there's one single thing that makes this worse. It's just my mind is bending, and I don't have a good way to practice and try to erase some of those hours of Tetris out of my mind. I guess like the one fault would be like I don't know how the blocks come down, and that's that very much could be just me not knowing the mechanics of the game fully. There could be an actual rhythm there. But man, I wish there was some way to know, like, you have so many set breaker blocks coming, and you knew when they were coming, so you set yourself up better. But the counter to that argument is both boards get the exact same drops at the exact same sequence. Right. So like it's a mute point almost in the competitive end of it.
Moving a little bit more into like the visual area of this video game. We get some retooled, we'll start with the characters, retooled characters that are a bit more chibi than they are in their standard fighting game form. Do you like the redesign in that regard?
I do. That was more of a question for you, though, someone that's played a lot more Street Fighter.
Oh, yeah, no, I always like weird reinterpretations of these characters. And they did end up making Pocket Fighter after this, which was a fighting game where they took these exact models and you got to physically play a fighting game with them. Which, yeah, I thought was, I think they're well done. I like them. They've got charm to them.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I was gonna say I'm a big fan of how like Akuma looks. I don't know if it's just the Stark. He's just like he's got that dark outfit, that like black outfit on with the bright red orangish hair, and everyone else has like these light colors. Maybe besides Morgan, but even Morgan has like light purple hair. Like it's still like a lighter. Yeah, it's like green hair. You still like you see her skin and like the outfit. It's the tiniest bit of black. I mean, that's just her character. Her outfit in general is just the tiniest bit of fabric in the right areas. But no, something about Kuma just like he pops as opposed to all the other characters. I don't know if it's just like the contrast of like the black outfit with the orange hair.
No, he does. I think also like everyone else is like that chibi look gives them sort of like an inherently like cute look to them.
Yeah,
and he still looks scary, even though he's like in the same like disproportionate. Yeah, it's funny. Does the look of it still work for you today?
Yeah,
it's very like of the time, right? To sort of like infantilize characters and do these. We had like what was it? Obviously, like Rugrats was a big show, but like what was it? Tiny Toons, right? Like kind of giving you the Muppets babies. Like it was very much of that era. Like let's take things that are whatever and we'll babyfy them.
I think part of if you were like to present this as like a new game to someone, I think someone would be like, "What?" But I think knowing of the time, I like the art style, and I think it's something. I think it's something that should stick around, but I'm not sure how it works to the unknowing, the uncultured, maybe.
Sure. I do think, like, visually speaking, layout-wise, I think the play area is very clean, having just even game boards on either side of the screen. Everything's very readable, legible. And I do think the characters are like nice and bold in the center of the screen. Where honestly, if they'd kept them the normal proportions, it would have looked weird in the center there. They look neat. They look better having, being a bit chunkier. They take up more of that physical space over there. If they remade this, or maybe gave it a sequel on cell phones, for example, would you prefer they kind of keep to this 2D look, or go more of the 3D model the way that 6 has?
I'd rather it stay like this, because it already distinguished itself from the regular franchises of Darkstalkers and Street Fighter. Like at this point, I think it's good to kind of still keep it different enough.
Yeah,
because it's Puzzle Fighter, not Street Fighter. And also, like, you can't lean into too much one way or the other, because Darkstalkers and Street Fighter a little bit different designs, so you have to do that Tekken X Street Fighter game where you have to kind of find a medium ground in a way.
Yeah.
So just doing something completely different in a way, it works better to bring in multiple franchises.
How about sound? Do you feel like this game effectively marries the Street Fighter and Darkstalker soundtracks?
Soundtracks, I can't speak too much for. I mean, it definitely sounds like a fighting game at certain times, but it is something to hear a Hadouken, every once in a while. So, like, they nailed that.
There's there's always like certain Street Fighter, especially this era's like Street Fighter's music that always just kind of stays in my head. So it is nice to hear some of those play out just in the background here. And I think they work well for a puzzle game the same way they do for a fighting game, but I think even more so here because I think fighting games take a considerable amount of concentration, obviously, but there's a different level that lets your brain, I think, absorb the music a bit better here than they do in a fighting game, so they almost work better.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any tracks that stood out in particular, or anything that you noticed in that regard?
I think maybe just like the main menu, whenever like exiting the game, I feel like I was always humming something afterwards, and I can't tell you what track it was, but I feel like it was just like the main menu, just like regular main theme. I would say more so, maybe not so much with the tracks themselves, but just sound effects again. Yeah. You got that same panic, Sonic is drowning type music when you got above that certain threshold in height.
Yeah, that sucked a lot.
Even if you were in control, you felt like all of a sudden you're just not in control anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and that, like, I think in addition to I think a lot of really good, like, I guess it happens whenever you're doing a good combo and your character attacks the other character. You get really good, like, shing sounds and things like that. Like, yeah.
You should get that Hadouken, depending on your character, I guess.
Yeah.
I did play as Ryu a little bit, so I did hear it a little bit.
I feel like I always default to Morrigan just because. But I did play Sakura quite a bit. I feel like for the same reasons you played Senko, I feel like I should know the pronunciation of that better. But yeah, the Sakura had a good fall pattern, I feel, which worked for me. We're gonna rank this here pretty soon, but before we do, a couple closing thoughts on it. What do you want in a sequel to Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo?
I think it'd be cool to I don't know. Nintendo's Nintendo, and have all these different IPs, so they get away with it in a Mario Kart or a Smash. But I would like to see the cast of characters grow just a bit more, even if you have like mirrored like board drops just for the different palettes. I think it'd be cool to incorporate more characters, even more IPs if possible.
Any in mind?
Well, like I'm if you go outside of Capcom, it gets real easy. Like, you can bring in a couple Tekken characters, bring in, I guess you could bring in Marvel characters, Marvel vs. Capcom, easily. But no, you start to go outside to the other main, fighting games out there. Hell, just get some random stuff from like Mortal Kombat, Blaze Blue. Just start bringing them all in, and maybe it's just 2 characters from each of those, or that's how you get your DLC because you have character packs or whatever the hell you want to do with that. But I think that'd be cool to see. Or even if Capcom wants to keep it in house, like they do for Marvel vs. Capcom 3, where the Capcom characters aren't necessarily Street Fighter characters. It could be like fucking Leon or Wesker or something like that.
Yeah.
I think you get weird just within Capcom with all their different properties.
Yeah. Maybe throw in some Resident Evil, some Mega Man, some Devil May Cry, Beautiful Joe,
Monster Hunter,
Ace Attorney. Monster Hunter would be fantastic.
Just be I would do the creatures for Monster Hunter. I would even do the like a character.
The hunter. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
have Ryu fight a Rathalos. That would be top notch. So, elephant in the room. Are you aware they did do a sequel to the game?
I know they have that cell phone game.
Yeah, they did. That's why I was asking about I just named all those characters because those are all in it. So there's Puzzle Fighter, which I'm going to read here the description of Puzzle Fighter. You ready?
Okay.
Puzzle Fighter was a free-to-play competitive puzzle video game. This game came out in November of 2017 and was discontinued and delisted in July of 2018. It was not good.
So I remember distinctly this thing coming out and you playing it and not liking it.
Bingo, yeah, you got it. It was just not good. It was way too they did the thing you wanted, where hey, you can play by yourself a bit more, but they did it in a way where it was really bad challenges and stuff that it just didn't feel good. The controls were drag and drop with your finger. You had to tap to rotate, which wasn't bad, but it's the imprecision that really would throw you off. And you know how important that is in these types of games. The playfield was really weird, where you played in the center and your opponent was off to the side. So you're holding a vertical screen, and the kind of the primary gameplay is dead center.
Like Tetris 99, but maybe a little bit bigger?
Smaller.
Really? Than all the boards of Tetris.
There are... If you think remember in this, you've got your games on both sides of the screen and the fighters in the center.
Yeah.
This, your fighters are up top, side by side.
Okay.
And they take up about a third of the screen. Then the next 2/3 height of the screen, the center slice of it is your gameplay field, but then equal segments in thirds across the bottom 2/3 of your screen. The left side is your up next pieces. The right side is your opponent's board. But there's all of this negative space on either side of those things. So there's
That's not great.
And the character models are all 3D, very ugly. The only fun part of it is that they did expand it out to Mega Man, Devil May Cry, Beautiful Joe, Ace Attorney, etc., etc. But yeah, it really was just not great.
Yeah, I would. I'm aware of that, but my line of thinking was in 2024, you're walking to Dave & Buster's and you see Super Puzzle Fighter 3 or whatever the hell they want to name it, because I know that was
Super Puzzle Third Strike.
Sure.
HD edition. Yeah.
Super Puzzle the movie.
Yeah. Hey, that's what I'd sign up for. No, I think exactly what you said though, right? Make a new game, make an actual sequel, keep the art style on that 2D nice looking whatever. I think you can do something to enhance the gameplay a little bit, right? add another color, maybe that complicates it a little bit. Maybe that overcomplicates it, because there's a very, delicate balance to this stuff for sure. I think you go full Capcom. I think like there's enough Capcom characters and franchises that you could just endlessly add in characters and have a pretty cool roster to pull from. That not only like brings in different gameplay pieces in terms of like options for the gem drop for each character, but it also just lets you celebrate more Capcom stuff, because I think Capcom is one of the few. I think like Capcom and Sega are both pretty good about keeping their legacy strong, and available in many ways. I think Sega's been doing that for a really long time. Like, name a thing you can't buy Sega Genesis games on, and I'll give you $1 to go buy a Genesis game on something else. But Capcom's been really making a strong push in the last few years to like, let's get these collections out. Let's bring more of our games and make them more available on modern platforms. So that's a plus.
I mean, Christ, they just brought the original trilogy to PC through
PC,
God.
yeah, right. Like, that's there now.
Like Resident Evil, I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, those Marvel vs. Capcom
the
games
first one, the other two are coming in time, but yeah.
Yeah, but they're coming. Marvel vs. Capcom, those are coming to modern platforms, minus Xbox. But still, like, stuff that even like Marvel vs. Capcom that seemed impossible to get the licensing rights again for, are doing that. And then, my prediction is that that's just setting the stage for the Marvel vs. DC coming from NetherRealm to be announced at the Game Awards or something this year. Stay tuned.
I do have another idea for a sequel. I would like to, don't know how to do it. Maybe it's a special block per character, or it's a special dump or something. But meter, that's the core of a fighting game. Is how to control a meter, when to spend your meter, especially in Street Fighter. I feel like there's a mechanic you can build around that.
Yeah, there's other games that do that with puzzles. Like Luminous does that with meter. Tetris Effect does it too, of course. Yeah. But like Luminous does it where you build up and you have these like kind of avatar powers. I'm thinking of Luminous Electronic Symphony on Vita had that. Yeah, you could very much do that. And it just gives you something like, maybe it's a line clear, but maybe it's just one line clear. Or this one can clear 3 squares. Or, something you could play around a lot with that. If it didn't come out, do you feel like playing, like it being part of the collections is enough? Being able to just play it right now?
Yeah, I think this was really like the only one of these besides all the, like the main one of these besides all the, like the HD and stuff, like where there was never like a Super Puzzle Fighter 3. It was really just that cell phone game.
It. Like there was never even a 1 either. They just
I know, yeah. So like, I think at this point the game's just so iconic. I mean, at this rate, like you could get away with just doing collections and maybe adding. I mean, Christ, they've already added enough modes with the X mode and all the stuff you already mentioned. So I mean, look, there is nothing wrong with being, like you said at the top. It's overwhelming to pick where you want to play it and how you want to play it. But sometimes, rather have that problem than the how the hell am I going to play this?
Yeah, I mean, because
we just ran into it last week with Soul Calibur.
Yeah,
like it's stuck. The HD has been delisted, and it's just kind of stuck on its platforms now.
Yeah, you've got to go chase that down. Now it's everywhere. It is the Capcom Fighting Collection and the Capcom Arcade Second Stadium compilations that are all on Switch, PS4, Windows, and Xbox One. The Xbox 360 version is still available for purchase, and you can do that straight through Xbox One.
That's good.
I don't think that's being delisted. I believe the PS3 version is still available. That may have been delisted, but I think it's still available. You just got to scan a QR code to add funds to your wallet. And of course, you can go chase down those original like console ports if you so choose. I believe all the mobile versions have been delisted at this point. Not the sequel, but the original ports of this. Um, yeah, that it's out there. And I think it kind of works anywhere with a D-pad. I would not play this on a phone if possible, but I do think the HD remix version adds a couple different modes that make it, enough of a change up, but I think the core gameplay of just the standard arcade mode is solid fun and easy to get into and enjoy. So final thoughts on Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo?
I'm glad I got to play this as someone that's a fan of like puzzle games like this.
Yeah,
that's kind of like it's worth checking out if you haven't checked it out yet. I find it hard to believe you wouldn't have at least seen gameplay of this at this juncture, but yeah, it's worth getting your hands on to mess with it a little bit.
So, Matt, we've reached the end of the episode, but we're not done quite yet. This is where we rank this week's video game on the list. The listeners, you can check out the list of all 100 video games on thefreecheese.com/thelist. This is where we arbitrarily pick a spot between 1 and 100 now, and then we move slightly higher or lower until something feels just right. I feel like you've been following on the sword a lot lately, and I'm trying to help you out here, but I don't know that I...
Oh, man, this one's a crapshoot, because I have arguments for probably top 30, top 40, top 50, all the way down. I would probably say, like, absolute floors in, like, the 60s somewhere. Like, I'm all over the place on this one.
I got it. You ready?
Hit me.
The new 47. Just above NBA Street, just below SSX Tricky.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it there.
Do you like it above SSX?
I don't think so.
Me neither. Do you like it below NBA Street?
I don't think so, because my number score is going to be exactly the same.
Perfect. There it is. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. We got it. Congratulations to the new... I already lost the number. 47. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. It's been a bit since we've had, I think, an easy ranking, but also like a middle of the road ranking like that.
Yeah, I mean, there was arguments everywhere. Because again, you just look at a game, like, all right, that one's better, and then you look like 2 up and 2 down.
I know.
It's like,
We're getting somewhere though. We've got quite a list we've built out here.
Hey, Metal Gear Solid 2 is better than the game again for the first time in weeks, so
I did what I could.
There's that.
It's a list, man. I tell you what.
Yeah, it's yeah.
I kind of want to visualize this list at some point. I don't know if I don't know. Well, we've got plans for that in different ways, but be neat to see like the box arts all stacked. It's just weird because not everything's so uniform where you can easily view that. I don't know. Well, thanks, Capcom. And thanks, Matt, for adding that to the list. We are coming to the end of our little fighting game celebration as EVO concludes. But we're moving right... As fighting games wrap up, we're taking a turn down puzzle lane here. And we're pivoting next week into more puzzles. Actually, the next few weeks are all puzzles. Starting with Cleopatra Fortune next week. So come back, check that out with us. Until then, thank you, Matt. Thank you, listener, for listening. See you next week. Bye.